Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Dear brothers and sisters joining us now and later in the deep future, whenever you whenever you're seeing this, we say to you, may the peace that only Allah can give be with you. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
How you doing, Hajjah?
Alhamdulillah. No complaints. Day to day, little by little. The moment I think I need to stress out about something, Allah
Yeah,
shows up and be like, "Girl, stop tripping about that. We
yeah,
got this."
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
been good. It's been a cool wave. Today was freezing. It kind
yeah.
of threw me off a little bit because I've
Uh,
been having my fan blowing on full blast all this week.
mhm,
And when I got
mhm,
up this morning and have to grab a blanket, I was like, "Oh, it's
mhm.
it's
It's,
cold.
it's
We
like
got a
that.
cool breeze today." So,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's good, and when I have my fasting day, I'm able to get my little extra midday nap in the midst of everything. So it's
well,
been
the nap of the faster or the sleep of the faster is a charity.
oh,
Also, yeah,
alhamdulillah. I'll
that's why
take
that's why it's so good.
it. I'll take
you
it.
get, you
It
get
feels like a real
double,
gift. Like it
double
really
blessing.
does.
The blood, along with the fact that that time collapse happens right there. Okay,
Yes.
we just cut
Yes.
out a couple of hours of this day.
Yes.
All right, let me
Yes.
get out your way and let you do you, boo.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings, everyone that is joining us here on Wealth Creation Preservation. I'm so excited we're able to be here for another Monday. We missed each other that last Monday, but that's okay. We're here now. This is our opportunity to check in and see how it's going. So, in sticking with the subject matter where we have been talking about the power and the force of a plan, I want to extend on this thing that I've just really been working with my group around. Our conversation has been nature as a master teacher, right? And you can't help but to think about when you think about plan, you think about plants, you think about nature, you think about trees, you think of all of these different things. And so I've had time today to really sit with that. And also, this is like my day of planning, like budget planning as an entrepreneur and getting prepared for the next month. Like, where are we at? This is the midway part of the month. I always sit down and I start to do my budgeting to see like, okay, what has been covered, what do we need to be prepared to cover coming into the second half of the month. So my budget planning day falls in the middle of the month, and then at the closing of the month. Those are the two times that I really sit and just drill down. So today has been that day, that plan. And then there's always this part of you that's like where you see where if you're going to hit the mark, you're good on hitting the mark. And then there's maybe some months or some weeks where you're like, I've fallen a little short here, so we might need to make an adjustment here or there, or we might need to be very careful about where we spend the monies and things like that. This is the plan. But then there's some moments where you don't see how are you going to get it, like there's no clients scheduled, or there's no wiggle room for the miscellaneous or the emergency fund or whatever might pop up, right? Those circumstances where you don't really have a plan, it just something comes up. And so in moments like that, that's when you have, with the plan, you have this moment where you just got to trust it. You have to have this trust. You have to have this faith that, okay, what I can't see in this moment right now does not mean that it may not show up in the future or that the plan doesn't come forward. So let's move out of the stress zone of finances, because it's so easy to get into the pitfall of money being the stressor. And I want us to move out of that space, but to really think about when you envision the thing that you want to create, which brings me back to nature as a master teacher. So nature as a master teacher is really, like, I always just come up with phrases in the midst of a class when I'm working on coaching of my group, right? So this nature as a master teacher, our conversation that we had earlier this morning was to what is that thing of nature that you are drawn to and that you constantly, it pops up in random moments, and you start to have ponder different thoughts, or it's something that when you see it, it moves you a certain way emotionally. My thing for me has been these trees that are outside of my apartment. And I've been saying to myself, which I'm going to begin to do, is I'm going to start taking a picture of it within each season. So when I look at it right now and where it's at, it's grown, it's filled in. We've even had some hummingbirds and some bees, like certain, it has attracted different types of nature that hasn't been a part of it before. And the thing about this tree that I'm seeing is the shape, the changing of the size, the trunk is getting wider, how many more branches it is, how much fuller it is at the top. And I remember it being bare. I remember it being really limp and not and having to have these support posts next to it in order to make sure that it stays planted properly. I remember seeing them having to clip away at some branches and prune the tree, witnessing all of those things. And then now it's at its peak. In this moment, at this summer months, it is at its peak. And I know that it's going to transition into the winter where it's not going to be as full and as green and as colorful as it is right now. And so when I say nature as a master teacher, when I look at that tree, what about it do I see about myself? Right? Because within each of us there's this possibility of potential, like where we can go, where we can grow into. We see it. It's like it's so clear in our mind. We feel it in our heart, like, oh, when I complete this particular project, or when I reach this level financially, or when I go on this particular vacation, like whatever it is, it doesn't have to be always a business goal, but just any goal, you feel in your heart like what it is that you want to expect and experience. But there's a plan that has to take place to prepare you for it. And in many cases, the stressor can be around, okay, well, how is this going to happen? And the part that we have to relinquish is the how, right? Have the plan in place around that prepares you for each step in front of itself to get you to the goal. But in the midst of that, there is a moment where you do have to be okay with sitting in the now. Like, what are you doing right now, today, to prepare you for the thing that is coming up in the future, and not allowing the future goal that you have in mind to be set in fear? Like, I'm afraid, well, what if I don't do it? We're not thinking about what if we don't do it, right? What if it doesn't happen? That's not the part that we're focusing on. We're focusing on doing all of the steps to prepare us for receiving it. Like, in the midst of this plan, the plan is kind of the fun, the like one of the funnest parts. Like, it gives you room to, dream out the possibilities. It gives you room to, work out all of the ways in which you can explore what it will feel like to experience this vision that you have for yourself. One thing that I've done, and like when I start to feel like a lot of pressure in my day, or I am losing sight of the ultimate goal, I'll map out the experience. Like, the plan is just really about, okay, well, if you want to make this much money with your business per day, or this much per month, let's sit and make a budget for what that would look like. How would you spend this money? What would that look like? And I would have a good time with doing it. And it would relieve, for some reason, this is a system for me that I incorporate. It relieves a sense of the stress. It makes it so much palatable, right? And it makes this moment where you get to daydream. You get to really tap into your inner child and daydream about the possibilities of what's next. Even before we came on here today, I was just sitting and like cruising through Zillow. And it calms me, like, to just go and just like I look at homes online, because I know that eventually I want to own a home. I know that that is a goal of mine. My desire for it has not diminished. My desire for it has not been like, oh, forget that, let's do this. It has really turned up the discipline notes in certain things that I'm doing that are making me feel that much closer to achieving that goal. So I'll go through and I just look at houses and I make note of, like, my non-negotiables around a house is, I know that I want a house that has a tub, because a lot of newer homes just have all these stand-up showers. And I'm like, where are the tubs in the house, right? So I have a good time in looking at that. I explore the possibility of it being a home or a condo. Okay, well, let's look at, well, what are certain condos doing? What does this look? Where are they located? Would you want something like that? And I just have a good time sitting and living in the dream of a thing. This same thing can happen with whether it's a business, whether it is a relationship goal, whether it is family or community building, just anything, the getting the degree, like all of the things, whatever that goal is, there is a part of you that needs to hold space for the dream of the achievement. That just saying, I want this, I want this, I want this is not enough. It is about embodying the now, like living in it, embodying what that looks and feels like by exploring it's already there. Because the vision for me, the vision is it's already there. When you have the vision, it's like, sure, absolutely. You want that? Okay. So let's see let's explore what that would be like to have or do or see or experience that. And so to sit in that, it allows your body to call in the resources necessary to close the gap of your present self and the future self, closing the gap to bring that into reality. Like, so that it becomes, the vision becomes clearer and clearer, it gets closer and closer to you, and it becomes real, right? And I think that we have overthought, when we overthink this idea of the plan, that in many ways this plan only has one way to be. So, in rolling back, like, now that I've given you the foundation about this ideal of the plan, there is this part of, when I say nature is a master teacher, my teacher right now is this tree outside of my apartment. And in our conversation that we had this morning, I asked everyone, when you think about a tree, what do you think about? And they gave just amazing answers, even with things that I hadn't even thought about. But the plan, even for this tree to grow, there's multiple branches on this tree. So it's like, look, here is the tree, the trunk of the tree. And then, like, it may start like this, and then there's one season where the one branch comes out, and then another, and then another. It's like all of these branches. And then from these branches are other branches, right? And on that branch are additional ones, and then there's leaves, and then there's, so it's like all of it continues to grow. This part of our life and our plan can have many branches as to how we will achieve a thing. So this idea that it's only one way to achieve it or to make it happen is, no, it is about a balancing act. It is a balancing, right? This balancing of your personal life, the dream and the goal, what it is that you want to achieve, your self care, your spiritual growth, your family. All of these are a part of this whole journey towards this goal, right? So I could have a goal in my mind, but there is a part of me that has to think about, well, how does my business support this goal? What does this look like? How will it affect my relationship with my family? What does it look like, and how will it affect like how I am taking care of myself spiritually? What does it look like, and how will it affect how I take care of myself physically? So all of those things. So we can be stressed out in one direction of a thing, and we're not allowing ourselves to really nurture and take care of ourselves. So one branch for me is like me fasting on Mondays is something that it's been almost a year now that I've been doing it on Mondays. I haven't graduated to doing it on Monday and Thursday, but Monday is my day, right? And it's something that forces me to stay centered as I prepare for the week ahead. That's one part of it for sure. Is it keeps me focused on, okay, this is a new week, and now I have time without any other distractions, without, I don't watch any TV during that time. I'm like, I really treat it like this is my Ramadan day, right? Because it is in that moment that I'm allowing my spirit to be in alignment with what my plan is. And I allow the plan to, develop within that day. So it's like if I get inspired to study, like today, to study and pay attention to that tree, then I sit and I have time to be able to do that. If I wanted to kind of like daydream about the goal or about the dream, I sit and I do that. If I needed to pay attention to like sit and work on my budget, then I have time to sit and do that. And my thoughts and my clarity is available and not distracted by the extra noise, right? And in that, like sometimes I'll have my little moments where I'll go on and I'll surf on social media for a moment. That's when I'm coming up for air and get my laughter in for whatever it is that I'm scrolling on social media. And then I unplug and I get back, pull out my notebook, and I get to work on that. But what that is a part of my spiritual focus for that day. And it is also something that is very much so a physical focus for that time, right? And so when I do that, and then plus we got wealth creation preservation in the evening, and the first thing in the morning is my coaching group. So I'm seeing about all of these different aspects of myself through that time. Then there's other days in the week where I'm running my business. So my business days that I'm focusing on with my business, then that's another branch to my tree that supports the plan towards the goal, right? So now I have time to really bring forward that customer service, really see about how I want to expand the business, really see if there's some areas that need some sharpening up, meeting with my assistant, and what are those things that we need to incorporate for the next month and so forth. That's a whole nother branch, right? Whether it's time where I call and check in with my mom, that's my family branch, right? Sending the text to the family. I have other friends of mine that I hadn't spoken to in a while. I'll pick up the phone and I'll give them a call. I'm solidifying, making time and spaces for all of that because I want them to be a part of this journey and this big dream and the big plan that I have in place for myself. So as we start to continue to navigate this beautiful plan that Allah inspired on your heart, like what are those branches or those areas of yourself and of your life that need to be stable to be able to carry the weight and the responsibility of the fruit that you will produce, right? Because this plan is that tree. That's the plant, right? The plan is the plant, right? And so what are those things that you need to make sure is strong enough to be able to carry the weight of what it is that you're going to produce as it is growing? As you are growing, there are things that you're going to need to be more responsible for. You're going to have to be more responsible for a larger income. You're going to have to be more responsible for a larger place where you live and what the responsibility looks like. You're going to have to be more responsible for your mental health and your physical health, right? You're going to have to be more responsible for it because there's a big responsibility that comes with a big vision. And sometimes we're so quick to want the vision. Like we want it, like when we think of it, it's like, yeah, I want it. And then we wonder why there are so many different obstacles that pop up as a result of this vision that has showed up. The obstacles are really there to strengthen you in the areas that you need the best support in. It is to strengthen you to be able to take on the responsibility of the vision that has been given to you. So very simply, like even with as I kind of navigate what like having the capacity for a thing, that you know when the Quran was revealed, there were generations and times that had to happen in order to prepare humanity for the responsibility of the Quran. So we have multiple revelations prior to the Quran being revealed. Why? Because we weren't ready. Humanity wasn't ready yet for the responsibility that came along with the revelation of this Quran. So prior to that, it's like, okay, we got to get the humanity's mindset prepared. We have to, we got to help them to unlearn certain things so that they make room to learn these new things. We have to take us through this process. And in taking us through this process, we are now in a generation where it's like, okay, we're ready. They are ready to understand and to absorb and to, take on the responsibility for this revelation. This is the same thing with our lives. Like we could be asking for a thing, but we're not quite ready for the responsibility. So what we want to ask for and pray for is ask Allah, like, okay, Allah, show me what it is, like strengthen me to be able to have the capacity for the responsibility of this vision that you have placed upon me. Give me the ability to be responsible for this blessing. Because with this blessing, it will be a test. And with every test, there is a blessing. So, how are you allowing yourself to grow in your plan? Like, enjoy it, celebrate every movement, every moment, every branch, every leaf that seems to expand because you're like, ooh, I'm going to be ready to be responsible for this vision when it shows up, and seeing what that looks like. And in you doing so, then now you are ready to, reap the benefits of the fruit that is born from the plan that you have planted. Okay, and with that, I'm gonna call the man back into the room. Maybe. Okay, I guess I still have some time. All right, so then we'll keep it going. So one thing about that I will add to that as we're waiting for the imam to return is there are certain things that will pop out and magnify for you to pay attention to it within nature. Like when I say about nature being your master teacher, sit with yourself and think about something in nature that you're moved by. So for me, the ocean is one. Ocean, anything with water, any body of water is a big one for me. My tree, the only reason why I say this tree, I've never really paid much attention to trees, but this tree outside my window, I paid the most attention. It's like, why is this one just like, it's almost like this like film when it just zooms in. There's something about that tree that always just catches my attention. And and so I'm like, okay, I need to study and understand this tree because there's a conversation happening that I need to understand. And so, in me needing to understand this tree, I'm learning a lot about myself because what I'm seeing in my external world is only an opportunity for me to better understand my internal world. So, on my birthday, like I said, I went to see the stars. We went to the Space and Science Center. And though I was there exploring and looking at the stars, there was still a part of me that couldn't help but to understand that I was looking at myself. Like, what is this saying about me in this moment? So when you observe, a butterfly, or you observe certain, plants, or you'll observe the weather, when you observe, it's like this is what is happening outside of you is also happening inside of you. When it is snowing outside, or there's a blizzard, or there's a tornado, what is happening outside of you is also happening inside of you. And as we prepare for every season that shows up, there are things that we need to do to prepare for the winter months. There are things that we need to do to prepare for the spring and summer, right? As we know that there's going to be a shift in our lives. That is your plan. And when you understand your plan, you'll understand that you have a system of living. And that system is what preserves and explores and grows your life, right? So I know for me, there are certain months that as I've continued to study myself, there are certain months that I'm very sensitive. Like I'm just very sensitive in those winter months. Like I'm really sensitive. I really need to go into my cave. I'm really not as social, right? Whereas right now during this season, I am excited to explore different things. I'm looking forward to, oh, what can I do next or do new, right? And it is during those winter months where I feel the most creative. Like I want to create some things. I want to paint or I want to write, I want to do those things, right? In the spring is usually around that time where I am like, it's like, what is this new thought? This new way of being. I know that I'm different than what I was the year before. How do I further get to explore what that feels like in this next season for myself? So think about what are those things that you are drawn to, like what ladybugs, butterflies, the ocean, the rain, the clouds, trees, plants. Like really pay attention to that, and whatever it is that you like. Oh, you know what? Really drawn to that. Good. That is your cue to study that. That is your cue to pay attention to it and get out of it and let it teach you as nature being your master teacher. And we're back.
Well, I took a cue from your cue. You said
Okay.
that is your cue. Now my little microphone here is not working properly. All right. And we're back and ready. Alhamdulillah. No, I have actually been here. You, as usual, you gave me a big chunk of. I could actually go down that street right there. But some of it. I'm going to touch on some of it, inshallah. And you'll see where it connects with what you're saying. I'm going to push on though, and let's see what we got here. All right. Alhamdulillah. Bismillah. So we're continuing on the power and the force of a plan. And uh, I always have to I do my best and I try. It always concerns me that everybody is with me in the right context, right? In the right context. Because I don't want you to miss anything if it's possible. I don't want you to miss anything. But Allah's in charge of that. Now, okay, the power and the force of a plan is the series that we're actually working on. The simple statement of what I want you to appreciate, and that my object is to try to build you up to that fullness. Excuse me. Build you up to that fullness is listen. Oh, here it is. There it is. The field of dreams. You can use that slogan, saying, meme. If you build it, they will come. Right? If you build it, they will come. Right? That was the recurring, thought plot line of the movie. And I'm saying to you, the plan. If you write it, it will happen. Let's use that. If you write it, it will happen. Right? And so far, what we've said that a plan is a mechanism. Do understand? You're listening to students of Imam Muhammad Muhammad, and the thinking and a thought style and a way of perceiving, right? That comes from that study. Okay, so it's natural for us to take, to take what we hear, and then you have to relate it to what you've heard before. But you also have to be cautious that you're not relating something new to something old and conflating one with the other. So when I say to you a plan, and now I say to you right now, a plan is a mechanism. That's not a standard pattern of thought for us, for people in the world. That's not a standard pattern of thought. Those of you who are in touch with us, when we talk about metaphors and the psycholinguistics, the psycholinguists talk about metaphorical structures in your mind, right? You have a metaphorical structure for me because of your experience and because of where you are. You have a metaphorical structure for elevators. You have a metaphorical structure for playgrounds. You have a metaphorical structure for theme parks, what have you. That meaning that there's a brain pattern in you that says, oh, okay, well, that's a theme park. Oh, okay, well, that's an elevator. Oh, okay, well, that's a grocery store. How are you able to make that connection? Because you already have a pattern, you have a paradigm in your mind that you overlay with whatever's in your environment and say, okay, that must be this, right? Okay, when has anybody ever told you that a plan is a mechanism? You heard it first here, right? The plan is a mechanism. And that's an abstraction, meaning that is drawn from when you understand the nature of creation and the creator's plan, his plan for us as human beings in this creation. You'll come to that point of understanding that a plan is a mechanism, right? Quran gives it to us. I'm not going to go all the way back down the road, but the Quran gives it to us when Allah says, whenever he intends a matter, he simply says to it, be, and it is. Translators translate that qada, meaning that whenever he has, as established as an edict, whenever he has a plan, some say, he simply says to it, be, and it is. So what's that? First there's the plan, he says to it, and then the plan becomes what he intends for it to be. The translation for us as human beings is that we can't just say to a plan, write the plan out and say be, and then the plan becomes what it is. No, not that. That's God. But in our human terms, if you build it, you have begun the process for the elements that make the plan real. They will come. Those elements will come. Okay, so all right, so I said that, but I want those of you, especially those who identify with the leadership of Imam W.D. Muhammad. I don't expect everybody who doesn't have the context of Imam W.D. Muhammad as a quote unquote leader, teacher, scholar, etc., to just ride along with it. You hang on, hang in if you can. That's fine. But in reality, it is those who are identified and who are comfortable with and who are satisfied with that leadership, that thought style, that history, etc. It's like, this is for you. This is your inheritance that Wadafuddin Muhammad has left you by the grace of Allah. This is it's like we passing out checks. There's no boast. It's like we're passing out checks. So you can be in the line, get your check, or you can say, oh man, you can't cash that. Okay, let's move on, Fahim. So here's a statement from the Imam, because this is to encourage you to come in closer, psychologically, spiritually, intellectually, okay? Draw nearer to these things that we're talking about. The Imam said, God created us with the nature, with the character, with the behavior he wants, and that will remain good. That is, that nature will remain good as long as the environment is good and suitable and conducive to the life of that development, like a plant in the right environment, right? But it will require knowledge, revelation, education, if that environment becomes itself. That is, if the environment itself becomes the factor for oppressing the intellect of man. You need I'm outside of the quote, you need the environment. You're interacting with the environment. The environment must be conducive to the destiny, the hope for destiny for you. But if the environment itself, I'm gonna use this analogy, becomes the monster, well, that's really a problem, right? If environment itself becomes the factor oppressing the intellect of man, so dear believers, we have to appreciate knowledge, right? We have to appreciate knowledge, appreciate education, and try our best to translate the complicated ideas and theories into the language of the common person so they can get the benefit. Okay? This is what's happening is that, end of quote, what's happening is that the common person is not getting the benefit and the blessings of the evolution of man, the growth of man, the civilization and development of man, when and if knowledge is so far out of their reach, because the ideas with that advancement have become so complicated that the little guy, quote unquote, the common person can't keep up, can't catch up. And it's very, very bad today, because we're at that period of time where the knowledge is not waiting. The knowledge is not waiting. And in most of, especially the public instruction, public schools, public institutions of learning, most of them aren't equipping and even equipped to give the common person access to and the best of what's available in knowledge today because of the evolution of man. And okay, so we're moving on. But let me hold on to this for, I want you to have a very real sense of hope. If you're not feeling like Haji was talking about, you have this aspiration, you have this plan, you have this thing you're going for, and you feel motivated by it. It's comforting to you that you're holding on to this goal, this plan, this objective, etc. And that's so. If you already have that, that's fine, and that's good, and that's a blessing. I'm saying that you need to have that sense, okay? Have that sense of confidence, comfort, hope, etc. And understanding this, inshallah, will enable you to do that more so, inshallah. So the plan, when we talk about the plan and how the plan itself is a mechanism, etc., that's an idea that's, quote unquote, that's advanced relative to the society and the average thinking, even in the scientific quarters today. Let's take a couple of steps further into that. So what are you doing, Fahim? I'm doing the best I can to translate the complicated ideas and the theories into the language of the common person so they can get the benefit. Okay. And sometimes the earliness, you say, yeah, the earliness, I'll use that word, of a particular knowledge relative to a particular people makes it feel out of reach to those people, right? And indeed, it feels out of reach for those people. But it's not because the knowledge isn't correct. It's because that they're too far behind. It's too far behind. Now, it's the responsibility of those who know, as the Imam has said, you have to make it accessible to the common person. So I've made a plain statement that a plan is a mechanism. And I know we touched on a little bit of it, but there's more to come that has to come after this context, even if not today, later on, is that I know, mashallah, I'm certain, yaqeen, I'm convinced, I have a conviction that the plan is a mechanism, and that the plan, once it's established, it has force in the nature of creation. Okay. And we have the tendency to think about force much more so in terms of like, physical, material, kinetic, concrete, pool ball, inertia, whatever. It's like physical, physical, physical. We don't have an appreciation for the power and the force of the non-physical. We don't have an appreciation for the power and the force of the non-physical, right? That's what we have to get. When you're confident of that, when you understand that that is a reality, and then now you put plan, this thing, you put plan in the context where, oh yes, there are things that are non-physical that have force. Okay. So put in that list of things that are non-physical that have force as a plan. A plan is a non-physical thing, but that it has force. When that plan respects the reality that transcends, meaning the truth behind the material reality, itself being superior to in force and power and permanence, it being superior to those material things, there's where your faith and that's where your confidence and that's where your conviction is placed. Listen, Muslims, that's what happened in the Abraham night vision, star, moon, sun. I call it night vision, star, moon, sun. That's what Abraham did. He went star, then he went moon, then he went sun, then he went beyond star, moon, sun. So that's transcendent. That's beyond the material. All those others represent some kind of force. If time permits, we'll be able to say more about it in detail tonight. But the idea is to understand that. So let's continue to read on this. So this is one of the other things that you have to embrace. I mean, if you want to get the benefit, you have to embrace that there are things that are non-material that have power and force. There are things that are non-material that have power and force. Don't think that power and force only comes from material things. In the Jummah, mashallah, we talked about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says that soon we will send down to you a weighty word. All right, send down upon you a weighty word, right? So that's God telling you that his words have weight, right? And then when you continue to extrapolate, if it has weight, it has mass, it has force, if it has force, it has energy. That's the word of God. But that's the word of God. That's the highest thing that reaches us in the nature of creation. But it's also true for other things that are non-physical, which also carry force. Right? And God tells us about that too. He says, look at the orbs, look at the bodies that are held aloft in the sky without pillars that you can see, right? Unseen things that have force, more force than the things that they hold up, all right? The massive stars and galaxies and quote unquote black holes that dwarf, you can't even say dwarf the earth. It's like the earth becomes like invisible when it's compared to some of these other larger things. But let's move on past that. So the point is, beyond that and behind that and beneath all of this material world that we're existing in are unseen forces, intangible forces, intangible to us, but they are the forces that make creation what it is. So reading this first paragraph here, it says, then connect with the universal interconnectedness, and that's Surah Al-Mulk. Surah Al-Mulk is the one where Allah talks about, go out, look, scan the skies and the order of creation in the heavens, and then go back and scan it again, and your vision will come back to you discomforted and worn out. And you'll to know that there are no fissures. There are no fissure, Fissures. There are no splits. There are no seams. There are no breaks. The universe is one systematic, whole, no breaks anywhere. No breaks anywhere. All right. So we have these boundaries. Your body seems to have a boundary. My body seems to have a boundary, and all these other things have boundaries. And that's perceptual. That's factual from a material perspective. But in reality, there's a common stuff that everything is made of, but it's just under different conditions. It takes on different aspects, different features, different attributes. Okay, that's fine. But everything is one. Just know that. Everything is one. That verse 21:30 as the Big Bang. The Big Bang, everything was one. And now we live in a constantly expanding universe. It's still the same that started as a bud. I'm going to use that. Just it started as a. And so the continued extension and expansion of the universe is that same blast continuing to reverberate. It's the same blast over billions and some say trillions of years. That's where we are. And inside of that universal interconnectedness is the powers and the forces, which I spent a lot of time so far talking about. So with that Big Bang, you get the birth of all these laws. All these laws, they call them Newton's laws and different things like that. Doesn't matter, whatever. There are laws that come. There are realities that come in consequence of the existence as it is and as it expands. And they are there and present, and they are operating. Man is just learning how to discover these powers and the laws. And that's what God said to Abraham in the sixth chapter, I believe it's 75 through 79, where it says, "Thus did we show Abraham the powers and the laws of the heavens and the earth, that he might have certitude." So this lets us know, this lets us know where certitude, this yaqeen, this certainty that is beyond mere belief. Okay, that's what God gave Abraham, but he received it by virtue of his grasp of the powers and the laws of the heavens and the earth. And with that comes personal force. Your personal power comes in consequence of knowing about these laws, the powers and laws of the heavens and the earth, and acting in accordance with that. That's what you want to understand the qadr quickly. I say understand this. Allah, you have to. It's going to still be a belief no matter what I say when we finish. The point is that the qadr, when you talk about the qadr is really about the universal law in this universe that we're talking about, and it's a universal law that impacts everybody equally. Meaning that you do this, then the universe will do that. Cause and effect. That's the nature of it. Inside of everything in this one universal system that we're in, you have mineral plants, animals, whatever, water, this and that, and in everything in creation, me and you and everything else in it, there's a benefit and a harm. There's a potential benefit and a potential harm. And that benefit and harm is set on law. So whoever interacts with a thing in a way that Allah, by his design, has said, okay, you interact with this way, then you're going to get this harm. You interact with it this way, you're going to get this benefit. I have put a measure, khayruhi wa sharrihi min Allahi ta'ala. That is the potential measure for benefit, and the potential measure of harm is with Allah. Allah knows that. You and I don't know that. So that's why some people, talk about it in these other kind of mysterious ways, and try to eliminate that there's any free will. But I'm not going to stay there. The idea is to understand that in the nature of creation, everything in creation has potential benefit, potential harm, and we are to, when we understand the laws, the powers and the laws of the heavens and the earth, then we adjust our interaction with the nature of creation in such a way that we stay on the good side of the creation and we avoid the bad side, which is literally what God tells us to do. Fastabiqul khairat. Strive after the khair and stay away from the shar. is what he's telling us. How do you do that? You have to know the powers and the laws of the heavens and the earth. I mean, that's a big statement. You have to understand the law of whatever it is that you're interacting with. When you understand the law of whatever you're interacting with, that means you understand how to get the benefit and how to stay away from the harm. You know where the harm is, where the potential harm is, and you know where the potential benefit is, and you always you're always trying to get the benefit of it, right? And that's where our relationship with Allah and that our development, Allah's 10th chapter and the 100th verse of the Quran. It says, none can believe except by the will of Allah. First, belief is very important, to put it lightly. None can believe except by the will of Allah, and He will send uncleanness on those who fail to use their brains. So that's God telling you, if you don't use your intelligence, you're going to run into a whole lot of shar. You're going to run into a whole lot of shar. But if you use your intellect, and that intellect is obedient to Allah, as the hadith Qudsi shows us, Allah says, I've not created nothing more excellent than you and useful than you, speaking to the obedient intellect. So when you have an obedient intellect, then that intellect will enable you, with the help of Allah, by the grace and the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is not purely enough, just the intellect. But that's a beginning. Then you know how you'll learn more how to navigate the nature of life, yours and the material creation, and stay away from the harm and get the benefit. That's how it works. Okay, so the universal interconnectedness and the powers and the forces that mutually influence and transform the potential, because that's what's going on also in this process. Because all this potential, right? God says, وَابْتَغِي فِيمَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ دَارُ الْآخِرَةِ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Seek with the means that I have made available to you, the means that I've made available to you, the life that comes after this life, the latter life, the end result, the objective. وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيا. But don't forget your share of the material world. So this we have a share of this world in which all things have a potential benefit, potential harm. We want to strive after the best of it, the benefit of it. And that's the opportunity that we have by living. Just by being alive, you can get some of the gold, you can get some of the silver, you can get some of the precious gems, you can get some of the mineral resources, you can get the benefit of social life and civilization, the interaction between male and female, etc. You can get all that. That's here for it. But you do it by learning about those things. The intellect helps us to learn those things, and the obedient intellect guides us to get the best out of that and avoid the harm from that. So so the powers and the laws that mutually influence and transform the potential in the universe into things particular. So we're talking about bringing things into existence, coming into possession of things that we aren't in possession of. And how do you do that? Okay, we've talked about the power of the plan. The plan has force and power, and when the plan is in place and you are acting accordingly, then the elements that make the plan real and actual, they are already moving towards you. This is Quran also. It's like I don't stop every time and say, okay, this is verse Quran. That's why it takes so long for some things, because if you do that, it does it. But let's stop that right now. 53:37. You start there, and that's the section where it says, and of Abraham who fulfilled all his obligations. See, the station of Abraham, that's not what that particular set of verses is, but it's this obvious connection. Abraham fulfilled all his obligations. The fulfillment of his obligations is the realization of his full potential. That's the star, moon, sun. He realized his full potential. He's our model. He's our example. He's the apex of it. And in his realizing that, then God is saying, be like him. He fulfilled all his obligations. All right. So you got integrity, honesty, trust, all that in there. That's a part of it too, right? But then it says, and that no bearer of burdens can bear the burden of another, and that man can have but what he strives for, and soon what he strives for will come into sight, and he'll be rewarded with the fullest reward. Right. So from a situation where you have no thing, that is, you don't have the thing that you want, but then you plan to have that thing, and then inside of that plan is the behavior. It's lined up. The plan itself is true to the nature of creation and the nature of what you hope to create. As long as that's real, and I mean real in the sense of haq, real in the sense of possible in the nature of creation as Allah designed it, okay, then you have the beginning of it. It's on the way. It's on the way. Soon will what he strives for come into sight. It's coming towards you, and you're coming towards it. When? As long as you stick with the plan. Stick with the plan and adjust. Sometimes you need to make in-flight adjustments because things change in your environment, but you make that adjustment, but you still stay on track. You stay on track until you come into possession of the thing that you planned for. But there's a relationship between what you are coming into possession of and your behavior in alignment with the plan. The plan is a mechanism that operates with your cooperation, right? It's like, okay, yeah, I got the plan. How come ain't nothing happening? Well, it's not happening because you ain't having it. You have to have a good plan, smart plan, right? What was it? Specific, measurable, attainable. I'll stay with that. Attainable, relevant, and the plan has had the relevancies, and then it has to be time based, right? There's a time frame for it. So you have that, and then the laws that line up with it, then you'll get it. The Wright brothers are always in my mind. Not going to talk about them, but just take a look at it. Try to walk through a little bit of that. Try to get a little small representation of the Wright brothers, the first in flight. Just think about it. Just think about it. Yeah, a lot of people talked about it way back, whatever, Daedalus and Leonardo da Vinci and but it never got done. It never got done until the Wright brothers did it. You just need to look at, because the Wright brothers are an example of what I'm talking about. The first one to have this solo, I don't know how they described it in the beginning, whatever, the first motorized human flight or something like that. The point is, whatever it was, they did it first, right? But the main model that they had was the birds. The main model was the birds, but they were very studious, etc. So I won't go into it. You take some time with it, because you can see an example of how something comes into reality that was not before existent and was never before done before they did it, right? And so when you follow the pattern of, okay, how did they get from 2 feet on the ground to flying through the air? Get that, and you will see the pattern of what I'm trying to express here. But let's move. So this spiritual physics embraces the transcendent power and force of your consciousness. Okay, this is your soul. This is a part that I would expect, and I understand it would be more challenging for some when we talk about the transcendent power and force of your consciousness. Again, if whatever I say sounds like what somebody else says, but they didn't begin, their point of departure was not from the Quran, then we're not saying the same thing, right? But that being said, just understand this, that consciousness, from that quote from the Imam, let me see if I can just find just that line. Okay, this right here. Okay, here it is, right? Let's go back. I just read this line so you can understand that I'm grounded in this statement from the Imam as I say this. I just don't want to lose you. He says, our consciousness lives in the universe, not just in the environment, the local environment. The place for it is the universe. So it's like you can accept that, reject that, get it, agree with it. It's, if you get, if you embrace it and yeah, if you embrace it and accept it, what have you, then you'll be able to move further in that. If you don't, you again, you're like you become something of a flightless bird in that sense. Uh, but I'm not going to stay there. So for those who can go on, then now this is where the other part of getting beyond the material powers and the material forces, right? Yes, material things do have power and force, but we're saying to you also, spiritual things also have power and force. And those spiritual things are things that we're identifying here as transcendent power. So you have transcendent power and transcendent force. It's not just material power and material force. There is spiritual power and spiritual force. And just like there is material physics, there's also spiritual physics, right? There are laws operating. Allah talks about, speaks in the Quran as paths in the sky. Allah speaks of paths in the sky. All right. So, airplanes, when flights from the west to the east and from the east to the west, they follow different paths. When you can talk about bees and you talk about birds, bees based on polarized light and based on the mechanism of sight for bees, they see patterns in the light that you and I can't see because our eyes aren't constructed that way. They see polarized light. And so bees see a certain way. So they have what you call the E function. And the bees do a dance, which the other bees in the hive, they recognize the dance against that pattern. And that bee that's doing the dance, called the E function, is actually telling them where the food is, where the pollen is, or wherever it is they're looking for. And they take off. So it was communicated. But it was because the ones who are being communicated to by the bee that knows where it is, they are able to read that movement against the polarized light and see where they're going. But if you don't have the eyes to see the polarized light, and of course, and also the knowledge of the dance, then you don't know what's being communicated. That all birds also, the migrating birds, the birds that migrate because of the magnetic poles and all of the rest of that, and the what you call there's magnets in there, what you call meninges. So birds are able to find their way because they're able to follow the magnetic field. Again, something that you and I don't see. So listen. If God does that for birds and God does that for bees, how is it that I'm saying don't have a problem with the translation and the analogy for that in the life of human beings? There are patterns in the sky, but it's the sky of consciousness. It's the sky of thinking. It's the sky of mind. It's the sky of mental maps that it's the abstraction of law. Just like the bee the bee is able to communicate to the other bees, so they're able to abstract from what they see that bee doing. Say, oh, okay, I get it, right? And then with us also, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has put this truth in the nature of creation. He's also given us a mind and this capacity for abstraction that enables us to get from the sun ideas, just like Haja was talking about the seasonal changes and the different conditions of plant life during different seasons and what that communicates to the observer, to the student, to the scientist. It's talking. And that Imam Muhammad says, he says the same thing. The idea people talk about the scientists, the exact sciences as coming from man, right? No, man is the student and nature is the teacher. So, and the first rule of scientific discovery and scientific inquiry is observation. Shh, don't say nothing. Just look. The creation is telling man, just look, and then I'll teach you. Right? And so if you continue to observe and observe, then finally you learn from the creation. All right, so that's the work of the material scientists. I'm trying to get us to get to the place where there's science over the science. There's science beyond the sun, like Abraham, star, moon, sun. There's science behind the science. There's transcendent science that's more than material science, but it's also even more true than the material science. That's what you saw happen. That's what you see happening. And this happened at the turn of the 20th century. It's like, this is not a brand new thing. This was, Einstein and the rest of the guys at the turn of the 20th century said, look, there's quantum physics. Yes, we know that there's classic physics. We know that there's Newtonian physics. But actually, we're at a place now where we have discovered, and it is very clear, mathematically and otherwise, that there is a physics that transcends the Newtonian physics, and it is called quantum. We'll call it quantum physics. So just in that, it's already past that. But that's still for them, and for the rest of us in the material realm. Even quantum physics still falls into the realm of materiality, because when you talk about Higgs field, Higgs bosons, etc., you're still talking about that you would consider material reality. But by Allah's grace and with Allah's help and our intention, we won't go into it. But those scientists who have got to that point and also went beyond even the quantum physics, they got to the point of understanding that the substrate of everything, what underlies everything, is something that can only be called consciousness. The substrate and what underlies everything in the nature of creation, they don't have a name for it other than consciousness. The Imam says the home of our consciousness is the universe itself, not just the local environment, the entire universe. So this consciousness that transcends even the material physics and the quantum physics, that consciousness which underlies it all, that's what's in your and my being, our existence right now. You right now, you know what? Guess what? You're conscious right now. There's some people who will say, well, are we really conscious? Okay, don't listen to those people. You are conscious, right? You are conscious. And what goes along with that consciousness is a power and a force. Just think about it. So, okay, am I conscious? Yes, you're conscious. What's the extent of consciousness? The extent of consciousness is the universe. All right. Does consciousness have any power and force? Yes, it does. But we don't feel the power and the force of consciousness in the same way that we might feel the sting of a bee or the peck of a bird or gravity on the earth in that sense. But it exists. It's powerful. It's influential. It's connected with everything. And it's doing what it's doing, whether you know what you're doing or not, because it's just just think about it. You as being alive. I got to move on. Being alive, the consciousness starts, and it doesn't stop in this world until you die. 100% of the time, it's even when you're asleep, that consciousness is just called subconscious, right? But it's still consciousness in your quote unquote sleep. All right, I just want us to understand that it has power, and force. All right, I hope you've gotten that. So spiritual physics embraces transcendent power and force of your consciousness, right? Translation, soul. So this consciousness, these varied levels of growth. Blessed is he that causes it to grow. The growth in consciousness, meaning in the power and the force of your consciousness, that is the utility, that your growth, development, understanding brings to your intellect. It feeds your intellect, and it empowers your intellect. That's the growth. So this purification, that means our way of life does everything that I'm not talking about doing. I'm just not gonna do it. But our way of life does everything for the growth of everything in our being. The 5 pillars of Al-Islam, the beliefs of Al-Islam, the embrace of that, and just throw in the reading of the Quran, and especially in the original Arabic language with understanding. It's like you do that, and these powers that we're talking about that seem mysterious to us, or that sometimes we might not feel that we're in touch with. If you do those things, if you hold on to those things, you practice those things, it's going to happen naturally. I've used the vending machine analogy. If you put in the right means of exchange, medium of exchange, you put that in there, then the machinery just starts doing what it's doing. Let's move on, Fahim. So now let's see if in these next few minutes to speak of I want us to understand how this applies. It's no matter what I say, I still can only be talking about a slice of the whole thing. I'm not talking about the whole. I'm just talking about a slice of the whole thing, and I'm particularly wanting us to understand, to speak of what Haji was speaking about, the season, brother and sister. This is the season for these very types of powers to come into the authority that Allah intended for them. This is the time for these particular powers to come into the authority that Allah created them for. It's very important. It's time for the spiritual that is aligned with the creator of the heavens and the earth to ascend to the throne as Allah intended when he said, Inni ja'ilu fil ardi khalifa. That's where we are. So one of the analogies that can help us get there that I'd like to use for the next few minutes, we may be a little after 6 today, 6 Pacific time. And it's going beyond the third wave. You know about the third wave, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes on with that. So beyond the third wave is the spiritual physics that I'm talking about, and along with that is also spiritual economics. The Imam Muhammad spoke of in his book, the Islam's Climate for Business Success. He said that the modern world economic principles have to repent. So he's already made a connection between economics and spirituality, right? The modern world economic principles have to repent, right? I want to mention one thing: fractional reserve banking and the Federal Reserve System. I'll just mention those two things. And if you can understand the idea about debt slavery, fiat currency, those kinds of things, then you should be able to take that statement from the Imam and say, yeah, that's right. They do need to repent. because there's some very, very wrong things that are being done in the name of capitalism and socialism, etc., that are immoral, etc. So the Imam said the economic principles need to repent. Michael Saylor, who's one of the big names as relates to cryptocurrency, Bitcoin particularly, and he's not the only one, but he uses this statement called economic immortality. He's saying that Bitcoin is a form of economic immortality. And there's this very clear science for it. If you don't have the background, it sounds like, man, that's way out there. But when you understand it, that's it. So, and I'm trying to get to a point tonight to try to share some principle with you so that you can get to that next level, right? Because that's what time it is. We're in a time where we're dealing with spiritual economics. All right? We already transcended the physical, so now when we start talking about the domain of economics is also coming to the spiritual phase of its reality, meaning that the power in economics is in what is itself unseen. I mean, I can just use Bitcoin, for example. Bitcoin is mathematics. It's mathematics. It's an application. It's abstract in the sense of it just being letters and numbers but it being systematically real. Whatever causes effect is real, right? So it's real, but it's also spiritual. It's also abstract, right? And it's those who have the ability to think in those domains. They are the ones that are going to have the conviction about what makes sense, that play on words, right? What makes sense, SENSE and CENTS, in today's world, right? So let's try to cover it, because I want you to at least come into the place where, okay, I have to think in these terms. So this transcendent physics, this what is beyond. We talk about Newtonian physics, and then in turn the 20th century, you got quantum physics, and now I'm saying to you, what we're talking about right now, we can call it spiritual physics, but if people don't really understand what spiritual is meaning in our vernacular, let's go ahead and use the term transcendent. It's something that's beyond whatever you know to be physics, and it's in the realm where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has set the laws for everything, but we're getting more to that. Okay, it's going to take a little more than I want to take time on. Let's see. Okay, let's see it. I'm gonna put myself on the clock right here. I'm gonna set this clock for 12 minutes. Seems like a good number. When the clock strikes 12, then that's just gonna be it, inshallah. All right, so Alvin Toffler. Some of you may be familiar with Alvin Toffler, the third wave. You get the idea of the third wave. This is a set of books and material, a trilogy of books. Let's make it 40 years ago. I might be wrong, but it doesn't matter. It's a little while ago. And it's everything about the movement from brute force to brain force. All right. Each wave expresses a relationship between three elements: force, wealth, and knowledge, right? And each of the waves are described by where the power is in that particular period or wave, right? There's the agricultural wave, there's the industrial wave, and there's the information wave. They've been called ages too: agricultural age, industrial age, information age, right? In the agricultural age, force was the dominator. It dominated wealth and knowledge. So whoever had the most manpower, force, etc. That's who won the war. That's who controlled the wealth, and that's who controlled all those brains that they were. That was about a 10,000 year period. Those of you looking at the screen, you can follow the rest of that. So that lasted for about 10,000 years until we come into the industrial age. And the industrial age is where wealth became the power, and it dominated force and knowledge, right? And that was from 1700s to 1955, the mid 50s. And that was an elapsed time of 300 years. So you see the shorter period of time between waves and ages, according to Toffler. So that lasted for about 300 years. When it rains, it pours. And then after the industrial age and the industrial wave, then we came into the information age or the information wave, where knowledge dominated wealth and force. And that was from 1955 to the present. And we're going to elaborate on that a little bit more. So again, one period of time for the agricultural period, 10,000 years, then the industrial age. But then the industrial age, it lasted for about 300 years, then enter the information age. And then that came in around 1955. And so we're at 70 years now. And I'm saying even before this, something like 20 years after that, we were already transitioning to the fourth wave, but that his paradigm doesn't incorporate, but it must be so for us as Muslims. I'll explain why in a second. About 70 years new at the time. So obviously at the time that I wrote this, what is this? That's 2025. So it's about 70 years new for most major Western nations, right? Those who are arising to dominance are those who create and exploit knowledge. All you got to do is look at Google. What are the fangs? Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, and I'm forgetting what the other S is. So you got to add Tesla to that right now. So that was that. So you started seeing knowledge and this technology coming into dominance, right? And that is what was being exploited. And in the earlier period, these financial instruments, as late as 2008, which brought us the birth of Bitcoin, the collapse of this so-called creativity that was being done, just reference The Big Short for most local understanding of this problem. But before that, you had leverage buyouts, right? Leverage buyouts and derivatives and CDOs, structured finance, and now Bitcoin. Now, okay, but now, so now there's a fourth wave here, and the fourth wave is characterized by rational and spiritual discernment and the execution of the will of the Creator of everything for everything. The will of the Creator of everything for everything. That's what time it is. This is early. When I say, well, I mean it's early. Do you hear this conversation everywhere, all around? When the taxi driver starts talking like this, now the age is complete. But this conversation right here, this is the early part of the conversation of the entirely new world, whose dawning is right now. This were in the scheme of God, this just happened, right? And it's the fourth wave. It's the fourth wave. And it has everything to do with the spiritual, transcendent aspects. And it is connected with economy, just as the agricultural wave is connected with economy, the industrial wave connected with economy, the information wave connected with economy, the spiritual wave is also, this transcendent wave is also connected with the economy. So follow this. So remember, knowledge was the last of the three waves, right? Okay, so here comes the fourth wave. When we talk about knowledge, knowledge is the highest form of power, right? Why? Because it's more flexible than force or wealth, the other three, right? It's more flexible than force or wealth. It multiplies wealth and force. The more knowledge you have, you can multiply your wealth and your force, right? And then wealth and force, we're speaking about how knowledge is the highest form of power that the world understands, right? Wealth and force are concrete and finite. Knowledge is neither. Knowledge is not concrete and it's not finite. That's a big deal. It's powerful, but it's not concrete. It's powerful and it's not finite. More and more knowledge gets produced every day. All right. Then there's wealth and force. When it comes to who controls wealth and force, that's the purview of the strong and the rich. The strong and the rich, they have a greater capacity to use wealth and force to dominate, right? So they generally control more of wealth and force. That is, the strong and the rich generally possess more of wealth and force, and that gives them leverage. But knowledge, the highest form of power, can be grasped by the weak and the poor. That's also, we saw what happened with the Jahil Arabs, etc. Once Quran came in their hands, and then look at that history in the golden age of Al-Islam. What was it? Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. It was knowledge gained and garnered from the revelation of the Quran and the interaction of that mind, heart, and spirit with the nature of creation according to the revelation, and then blossomed, flowered the power of Muslim. That same power exists for us right now. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world. You can put wherever you are. You're in Gaza, Ukraine, wherever they just tried to assassinate Trump at, doesn't matter. Wherever it is, the same power that existed before exists right now, right? And we have it in our possession. No strong or rich people can keep this level of knowledge and knowing, and therefore this level of power and force. Nobody can keep that from us. We can only keep it from ourselves by not delving into it, embracing it, understanding it, applying it. God says, "Is it but your deeds that I reckon up and recompense you for? Let him who finds good praise Allah. Let him who finds other than that blame no one but himself." So if it is the fact, and it is, that knowledge is the highest form of power, know this also: the highest form of knowledge is revelation. The highest form of knowledge is revelation. I don't care who knows what at MIT or Princeton or Yale or Harvard or whoever. It doesn't matter. The highest form of knowledge is revelation. And that is available to all of us. Allah is telling us about the nature of us and the nature of creation. And he's giving us the keys to the kingdom of the creation. But you have to iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. All right, I'm doing pretty good because I'm pretty much at the end of what I can say today. Oh no, we're not even going to do that. Take a screenshot of that and you'll be ready next week. We're going to get out for right now, inshallah. That's further details of what we're concluding on now. All right, we're out. Alhamdulillah, Haja, come on through. Let's see. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All right, how we doing? I'm gonna click down these welcomes and greetings and all that. You got anything you want to close out with?
I mean, I think every time you ask me that about the feedback,
you need a minute to digest.
Yeah, it's always I have my notebook in front of me, and so it's always this moment where you pick up on something else to take you down that avenue of to further exploring the thought. So for sure. We are coming back to, Quranic understanding, like really allowing the Quran to consume us,
Yeah.
That's ultimately what it is, to get the conversation that's unique to you, that Allah has for you specifically. So that's really the goal.
All right. Well, good deal. It's always a pleasure riding with you.
Me too. It's always
All
a
right,
pleasure to be
everybody.
here with you.
Everybody have a good evening. God's peace be on you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.